terrorist plots exposed in Europe. The Pope may be heading to the Holy Land. And in our interview segment, the spiritual darkness of Mother Teresa. We'll discuss her newly released letters with her spiritual director, Father Brian Kolodajczyk, and Bishop Robert Baker, the Bishop-elect of Birmingham. And later, these are some of the oldest versions of the Gospel in existence, and they are now at the Vatican. The man who purchased them and gave them to the Pope, Frank Hanna, joins us tonight, all ahead on The World Over Live.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. In March, the Vatican took possession of the Bodmer Papyrus. It is the oldest known copy of the Gospel of St. Luke and one of the oldest known copies of the Gospel of St. John. The question is, how did the Vatican come into possession of this papyrus? And what are the implications? Tonight, a man who can answer those questions joins us. But first, here's a backgrounder from Vatican Television. Take a look.
The entrance to the Vatican Apostolic Library. This is the Hall of Writers, the entrance to the Vatican collections that was set up by Pope Sixtus V at the end of the 1500s. The frescoes on the vault and the seat backs inlaid by Giovannino de' Dolci in the mid-1400s make an ideal setting for talking about the arrival in this library last year of the Bodmer Papyrus 1415. Several pages of which were presented to the Holy Father on the 22nd of January by the donate donors. It's an important part of the Gospels of Luke and John. It contains remnants of the oldest part of the text of the Gospel dating back to between 200 and 240 AD. We already possessed a part of the Bodmer collection, two of the letters of St. Peter, which date back to around 200 AD, and now there's this manuscript 14 and 15, which makes our library one of the most important libraries in the world.
Si tratta del primo manoscritto, il più antico manoscritto, che contiene due Vangeli
insieme. It's the first manuscript, the oldest manuscript, containing two Gospels together. The corpus of the four Gospels was formed during the 2nd century. This is the first example of a corpus of four Gospels already acknowledged as inspired and legitimate. Since this volume contains the 3rd and 4th Gospel, those of Luke and John, we can presume there was another volume which has been lost, and that would have contained the Gospels of Matthew and Mark.
Totalmente perduto, in cui c'erano i Vangeli di Matteo e di Marco.
We visit the deposit of manuscripts where the papyrus is kept today, presumably copied and used in Middle Egypt by a small Christian community. It would have been used as a book for liturgy. It was certainly leafed through many times, and this caused the partial destruction of the manuscript. In order to retrieve it as a relic, it was rebound, and this rebound form, of which we have fragments, was kept from the end of the 4th century in a Coptic monastery. Later, the manuscripts of the small library in the monastery were hidden, probably during an Arab invasion around the year 700, and there they remained until they were discovered in the early 1950s by the inhabitants of the area, and part of them, through the normal procedure of antique dealers, arrived in the West, and some of these manuscripts ended up in Switzerland in the Bodmer collection near Geneva.
Alcuni di questi manoscritti sono arrivati in Svizzera alla collezione Bodmer, che sta vicino Ginevra.
Examination of the text of this papyrus, originally made up of 36 double overlapping sheets for a total of 144 pages, has revealed many similarities with that of Code B, one of the best known manuscripts of the New Testament, which is preserved in the Vatican Library.
Il codice B è della metà del quarto e è stato prodotto in Palestina.
The Codex B is from the mid-14th century and was produced in Palestine. Since the two manuscripts have a very similar text, this shows they date back to an ancestor preceding the making of the Bodmer Papyrus, probably dating from the middle of the 2nd century. It had the same text. This means that the text was not revised further for doctrinal or stylistic reasons during the 3rd and 4th centuries.
Motivi stilistici durante il terzo o il quarto secolo.
Even though more than 50 years have passed since it re-emerged from the sands of Egypt, the Bodmer Papyrus 1415 still contains surprises. In 1961, a facsimile was published that until now is the only official example of the condition of the manuscript, which reached us in cases with virtually perfect, almost whole pages. In other cases, it was like a puzzle of fragments. What we see here is the first sheet that was taken when we carried out a check at the time the manuscript was delivered by representatives of the Bodmer Library. At this point we saw that this fragment is not recorded by the facsimile. We can compare the pages. You can see that in the facsimile there's a space where the fragment should go. This is repeated on various other sheets. We have a series of small fragments that will eventually have to be put back into their original position. This is a task that will take several years and will be done starting with computerized images of the manuscript, while the current state in which the manuscript is being kept under sheets of glass will remain unchanged over the next few years.
La situazione attuale in cui il manoscritto viene conservato sotto lastre di vetro rimarrà immutata nei prossimi anni.
Joining me now on set is Frank Hanna. He's the CEO of Hanna Capital and the man who purchased the Bodmer Papyrus, which he donated to the Pope. Frank, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, Raymond.
Listen, tell me, why, in your opinion, is this and was this important enough for you to buy it for the Pope?
Well, you know, when it first came across, some people have said, you know, how did you find this papyrus? And the fact of the matter is, we didn't find it, it found us. It found me and my family. Through a circuitous route of one person knew another person, okay, we came into contact with this thing. And after deliberating, you know, there were several important indicators that this was an important thing. First, the Holy Father was interested in it. And that alone, this is a man who's a world-class scholar, and this was something that he indicated to the Papal Nuncio here in the United States and to Cardinal Turan through people that Cardinal Turan was working with in the United States. This is something the Church must have.
Because this was about to be auctioned by Christie's, correct?
That's exactly right. In fact, a priest here in Birmingham, through his goddaughter, had found out that Christie's was going to be auctioning this. And there was great concern, not just within the church, but within the scholarly community. Might this incredibly important document fall into private hands, a private art collector who might not then make it available to scholars to continue to study? And so when the church indicated interest, they jumped on that and said, that's a good party to have it.
Well, and as people can see from the video there, we're not talking about just one piece of papyrus. We're talking about hundreds of pages.
Well, actually over 50. There are just over 50 leaves of this papyrus.
But this is one of others, correct? This set of papyrus is also, they have another set, yes?
Well, there are a variety of Bodmer papyri.
I see.
Named for Martin Bodmer, who owned this library.
I see.
This particular papyrus is of these two Gospels, Luke and John, in that order. And in fact, the page that the Holy Father looks at is a page where the Gospel of Luke ends and the Gospel of John begins. So already we know at that early date these Gospels were put together.
How long did it take you to make this arrangement? I know my friend in D.C., Pat Cipollone, was very involved in this.
He was, yes.
How long did all of this take?
It was a good process. It took about 7 months. Just about 7 months from the time we were notified about it to finally work through. There were a variety of complications. There were international international legal aspects to this. There was a matter of working out exactly how the purchase is going to take place, how it's going to be administered, that sort of thing. So, and then, people in Europe, not necessarily at the Vatican, but within England and places we're dealing with, they take vacations, they go on, and so things drag on. But it took a good while.
Where was the papyrus physically?
The papyrus was in a library, the Bodmer Library, which has a variety of rare books and manuscripts. Okay, and that's where it had been stored. Yeah, it was a fascinating story. The day it was transported, which providentially was November 21st, which is the feast of the presentation of Mary.
Right.
And what I learned in this process, I should have known this beforehand, but I did not know, that the Gospel of Luke is also known as the Gospel of Mary.
Well, tell people why.
Well, so much of the narrative, the nativity narrative, the narrative, things like the story about when Jesus is lost in the temple when he's 12 years old, that doesn't appear anywhere else. It's only in the Gospel of Luke. And you can imagine Luke sitting down with Mary toward the end of her life saying, Mary, we've all heard these stories, but somebody has to write these things down. These things are important. Tell me again and let me write these stories down. And so you find in the Gospel of Luke so many of these stories that simply don't appear anywhere else.
And they asked you, they wanted to make a commemoration at the Vatican, a bust, some plaque, something to commemorate this gift that you made to the Holy Father.
They were very nice about that, and we wanted the focus to be on the papyrus and what was really there. And we wanted a name for this project. Toward the beginning of the project, because there were a lot of difficulties in getting this done. And toward the beginning, Pat Cipollone, who is a lawyer in D.C., is a very good friend of mine, and he helped me in this process in working with all the parties. So we need to consecrate this. So we consecrated the project to Mary, and we named the project the Mater Verbi Project, Mother of the Word. It was only after we named it that we found out from the Vatican that the Gospel of Luke was known as the Gospel of Mary.
The Gospel of Mary,
yeah.
Amazing.
So they had suggested some commemoration, and I said, what we really need there is a statue of Our Lady. Where the papyrus is stored, I would rather there be a recognition of Our Lady.
Let's talk for a moment. You and your daughter, you told me a fascinating story recently. You and your daughter used to recite a bit of the Scriptures every day when you took her to school, right?
Yes, yes.
Tell me about that and how that kind of ties into this story.
Well, it's a great thing. I always take my daughter to school in the morning. That was time we spent together. When she was a little girl, we learned the 23rd Psalm, and then later we graduated to the 27th Psalm. But when she was about in 9th grade, we decided we'd learn the prologue to the Gospel of John. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it continues on. And it's some of the most beautiful poetry, not only in the Bible, but in any literature I've ever seen. It's just beautiful. She'd say a line, I'd say a line. She'd say a line, I'd say, and we'd go back and forth like that. And it was a wonderful thing for us to do. We did not know which of the 51 leaves of the papyrus would be presented to the Holy Father on the day that we were to meet him. But we came out and we saw that one of the leaves that was presented to him was the prologue to the Gospel of John, which also has incredible importance for this particular Holy Father, who is so dedicated to this notion of the Word, the Logos, the truth of our faith. So we were standing there watching him read this. As soon as he saw the papyrus, I can't read Greek. I don't know if you can read it. I can't read Greek. He said, where are my glasses? He puts on his glasses and he starts looking. We saw in the film that he starts looking and he starts reading in Greek the prologue to the Gospel of John. And as he's reading it, I nudged my daughter. I said, do you know what he's reading? She said, yes, Daddy, I do. I said, there was a reason that we learned that prologue. And it was just a wonderful moment to be there with my daughter sharing this as the vicar of Christ reads the oldest version of this that exists. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
When was the first time you actually laid eyes on this. When I first read this story, because we've known each other in passing from time to time, and when I saw the story cross the wires, the first thing I thought was, why didn't Pat Cipollone give you up and tell me about this? The second question I had was, why didn't you call? And the third question was this in Frank Hanna's living room on the wall, and he decided to take it off and give it to the Pope? Well, but that's not the case. You hadn't laid eyes on this until after it was acquired and moved to the Vatican.
I had seen photographs of it in the sales book that Christie's had put together. No, I took the word, but see, I had some really good due diligence on this, okay? When the Holy Father is saying the church needs this, okay, you don't have to keep digging. You can figure this is something important. But seeing it the first time was just splendid. It was really a great adventure. We were escorted down. We saw pictures of the Vatican Library.
The vault
earlier.
there, and then the vault down
We
below.
were escorted down in the vault, and then there's an inner vault within the main vault, and then within that vault, we first asked to see the Codex Vaticanus, which the oldest Bible in the world.
Right.
And we got to see that. And then we got to see the Papyrus. And one of the beautiful things about the Papyrus, it helps authenticate the Codex Vaticanus. It helps show us that this document, this Codex Vaticanus from 325 AD, we now have an earlier document from 175 to 225, 100 to 150 years earlier, which matches up almost exactly, word for word, letter for letter, and so it authenticates our Bible. The oldest Bible we have, it authenticates it. So we see this, Bishop Farina, who we saw speaking, he pulls out, it's the first time we see the Papyrus, he pulls it out. It's an amber color to it. And as he lifted it up, and he raised it up, and we're seeing it for the first time. This was like something out of an Indiana Jones movie, you know? We've seen it for the first time, and I hear Father Spiteri, who works with Bishop Farina in the Vatican Library, he says just very quietly behind us, there it is, the Word of God. And as I looked at it, and the light hit it, and it had a golden glow to it, and I thought Hollywood couldn't do this any better. Here we are in the vault. We're a few hundred yards from where Peter's buried, at about the same level.
Right.
So Peter's buried right over here, and we're over here in the Vatican vault, right about the same level, and here are the bones of the Vicar of Christ. This is the tradition the church is built on, and here's the word the church is built on. It was just a fabulous moment.
Wow, yeah. I'll say. Yeah. I want to back up a minute. Here's the Pope again, looking at it, reading it the first time. What went through your mind when you were there? And did you realize the enormity of what this was? This couldn't have been cheap, Frank.
No.
I mean, I don't want to be crass, but this isn't something that... I noticed Archbishop Sambi didn't call me, for instance, to buy this.
It was a bit daunting. When I first heard from him, I still remember it was the Friday before Memorial Day last year. And he called, it's the first time I'd ever spoken to him. He told me how critical this was for the church. I said, Archbishop Sambi, I've worked on different things for the church. This is not really something I've ever done. I've been very involved in Catholic schools and that sort of thing, but I haven't really been involved in this sort of thing. I said, I'm going to have to pray about this. And I even looked, I tried to look, what did Bill Gates pay when he paid for Da Vinci's Codex? Okay, Bill Gates bought that. Or what does somebody pay when they buy something that Paul McCartney writes his original lyric? You try to look for prices like that, but how do you get a real basis of comparison? It's very difficult.
Yeah, well, this is... irreplaceable.
Well, it is. This is better than a Picasso. This is better than a Renoir. This is the Word of God, and the oldest version of it. So at the end, I did pray about it, and sometimes you have to say, vocationally, what can I live with? And I thought, am I going to be at peace if I let this go? Because I finally thought, we have one God in the universe, and He came to earth one time. Jesus Christ came to earth one time. He gave us one specific prayer to pray. When they asked Him, how should we pray? He said, this is what you say. And it was the Lord's Prayer. And this is the oldest version of it in the world.
Existent, yeah.
And I thought, I will not be at peace if we let this go. So we got to figure a way to get it into the church.
This is interesting, because I want to explore this a little bit. There was a film, we had Father Robert Sirico, our viewers will remember a few weeks ago, was on the program, talking about a documentary he's produced called The Call of the Entrepreneur. You were part of that documentary. There's often a bad rap attached to folks who have money, have wealth. Right. Somehow there's a scarlet letter attached to that. You have too much, and you should feel bad about that.
Right.
How do you get around that? And isn't there a vocation for the wealthy?
wealth is like any other gift from God. Some people are born with incredible athletic ability. Some people have musical ability. Some people are attractive. Some people have the gift of gab. Some people know how to create wealth. All of them are gifts. We all know of athletes who become prima donnas and are spoiled and don't understand how to use that gift. And I could just go through with every gift we could list. Sure. And the same with wealth. We all know people who misuse that wealth and mistake what is a gift for something that they're supposed to use selfishly for themselves. At the end of the day, we have to look at whatever we've been given by God and say, this is a gift. First, I must be grateful. And secondly, I must say, how do I use this for others? And so, business people do get a bad rap. Sometimes pretty women get a bad rap. Sometimes good athletes get a bad rap because we have stereotypes. But each of those people can say, how do I use God's gifts for others?
And you have this principle of, what do you call it? Indispensability.
Yeah.
Share that with the audience.
I have been fortunate to have more wealth than I need for me and my family to survive. I have more than I need for us to survive. And we sold a business in 1995, and at that point I did. So I started saying, how do you think about this? Why do I have this money? And what ought I to spend it on? And in looking, because I get a lot of requests, in looking at it, I thought, I've heard the saying, the graveyards are full of indispensable people. But that's a very callous saying. It's meant to say nobody's really irreplaceable. The fact is, every one of us is irreplaceable. God put every single one of us here for a specific reason, for an indispensable reason. There are things that you are here for that only you can do, and same for me. So the challenge from a stewardship standpoint is saying, which are those indispensable things? First off, is the activity itself one that must happen? Now in this case, I had the Holy Father's representative to the United States saying, Mr. Hanna, the church needs this. That we need for this to happen. So the activity itself was indispensable. Then I ended up asking various people, including Father Donahoe, okay, how many others have we got signed up for this? And for some really odd reason, they were just striking. They had no real prospects. And there was a great concern that this papyrus may go into private hands or that Christie's may go auction it if we didn't take action real quick.
And people don't understand this. They say, the church should sell off all the buildings, sell off all that stuff. What do you need all that stuff for? The fact is the church is a reservoir. It is a collection bowl, if you will, for the history and not only historically speaking, but it is the reservoir of truth. And there's a cost to that.
That's exactly
and
right.
if it isn't contained in this one place where it's accessible to the world, it will be scattered throughout the world and really lost to history.
That's right. The church has riches, but not financial riches. And that people get confused with that. I'm reminded of St. Lawrence when they said, bring the church's riches. And he was demanded to do that, and he brought all the poor. Right? The poor and the sick. I mean, the church does have riches, but not the way our secular society thinks.
Thinks of that.
Yeah.
Now, you are, I am told, now you can confirm this or not tonight, I am told the Pope made you a Knight of the Grand Cross of the Order of St. Gregory. Is that true?
Yes. Yes. It's a wonderful honor. It's a nice honor.
Well, it's the highest honor the church bestows on laity.
Yes. So and my wife was also made a Knight in the Order of St. Gregory. So so that was a wonderful thing to have take place. Yes.
I was made a dog catcher in the Order of St. Ed, but I'm working my way up. It's very slow, but I'm getting there. I want to tell our audience in our remaining moments, if you have a question, give us a call, 1-800-221-9460, or internationally, 205-271-2980, or drop us an email, worldover@ewtn.com. What did your daughter think of this and your family think of this when you first brought up the possibility of spending what I know must have been an enormous amount of money, to say nothing of the enormous amount of energy, 7 months of time committed to securing this papyrus?
This has been first of all, it was a fabulous adventure for us. It's been an incredible gift for my family. So I don't mean this in any sort of a false magnanimous way, but at the end of the day, this has been an incredible gift for us. Interestingly enough, the summer we were going back and forth with a lot of telephone calls trying to figure this out. That last summer of 2006, that summer I decided, you know, this summer my daughter is going to spend an apprentice summer with me in my office. Okay, so that happened to be the summer. Whatever calls I was doing, whatever I was going to eat lunch with, she was there. I'd put the phone on speaker. I'd say, my daughter's sitting here, so know that, whatever you know. So she was there watching all of this take place. It was just providential. Because I said, you know, before she leaves, she's now a senior in high school, before she leaves, we're going to have a summer that she sees what Daddy does, and we spend it in the adult world together. We spend that time together. So it was just a great adventure every step of the way.
I think we have a phone call here. Do we have a phone call, Chris? I'll go to the phone. Are you there, caller?
Yes,
Where
I am.
are you calling from?
I'm calling from Iowa.
Thank you for being with us. What's your question?
Where is the library at? How much did it cost you? And I really like your thoughts, and you know, you are a definite credit to the Catholic Church.
Well, thank you for that.
That's very kind.
Yeah, he was asking where is the Vatican Library. I think he was asking where is the Vatican Library located.
Yeah, the library is actually, if you're looking at St. Peter's, the shot we all see from the front, the Vatican Library is over to the right. It's actually sort of in the same complex that the Vatican Museum is, over to the right-hand side. And the church, because I think in an effort not to have a dollar value assessed on the Word of God, has asked that we keep that private. And I think it's a good thing. At the end of the day, it's priceless. I'm glad we were able to get it for a price. But at the end of the day, the Word of God's a priceless thing. What is interesting is when it was transported from Switzerland on November 21st over to Rome, that night, it took place, the transfer took place in the nunciature in Geneva. That night, the nunciature was surrounded by the Swiss army to protect it. And then the next day when it went to Rome, they flew it to the Rome airport. They closed down the airport where it flew out of in Switzerland, flew it into Rome. It landed on a special tarmac and then was escorted by the police and the helicopter overhead into the Vatican. They put it in the vault and then...
And there it is tonight.
There it is, that's right.
And you weren't with it when it was being
No.
transferred?
The folks at the Vatican who were experts.
You told me earlier you're writing a book called The Meaning of Money or something like that.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to write a book? Why would anybody decide to write a book?
You know, well, that's a good question.
Yeah, I know it.
You know, I wrote it to help to help myself first, to study. You know, when you have to write something down, you have to study it. To study, what is money all about? Why does it exist? Why do some of us, most of us in America, are wealthy compared to the rest of the world? Okay?
Absolutely.
Why is that? What is the obligation? How ought we to think about it? Christ spoke a lot about money. And yet, we sort of shove it off to the side and say, well, you know, give some of it away until you kind of feel better about it, and we're careless about the way we give it away. We don't think about it strategically. We don't think about it in a stewardship way. Christ expects us to use the gifts we have, whatever those gifts. And I just found that there wasn't enough clear-headed thinking about why that money exists. So that was the reason for writing The Meaning of Money.
Well, this is certainly a grand way to spend it, I'll tell you, because just from a historical perspective, people, whether they be Catholic or any stripe of Christian, the historical value and the faith value of this papyrus is really, as you said, it's priceless because it authenticates the continuity of the Gospels from the earliest antiquity.
Yes. And, you know, I've found people of all stripes on religion fascinated by this. Yeah. Wherever they happen to be coming from, this is a fascinating topic. It's an old antiquity.
I was fascinated too. I hope next time you buy one, you'll call me or have Cipollone call me. Thank you, Frank Hanna. Thanks so much for being here. We'll have you back soon.
That sounds great.
That is all the time we have. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. Be sure to join us next Friday. We'll be having a full discussion and exploration of Benedict XVI's motu proprio, liberating the use of the traditional Roman rite of the Mass. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. We'll see you next time. Bye now.